Dr. Eleanor Washington sat quietly in her first-class seat aboard Stellar Airways Flight 347, bound for the Europa colony. At 78 years old, the renowned quantum physicist had earned her comfortable retirement after decades of work on space travel systems. Despite her age, her mind remained sharp, though her body showed signs of getting older. As she settled in for the 3-day journey to Jupiter's moon, a flight attendant approached with a fake smile on his face. "Ma'am, could I see your boarding?" "Pass again?" he asked, his voice not sounding sincere. Eleanor reached into her bag and took out her ticket. "Is there a problem?" The attendant, whose name tag read Greg, looked at it with too much attention. "This says you're in seat 12A. This is 4A. "No, that's wrong," Eleanor replied calmly. "I booked 4A for the extra legroom. I have arthritis, you see." Greg's face hardened. "Our system shows you're assigned to 12A. I'll need you to move to your assigned seat before takeoff." "There must be a mistake in the system. I picked this seat myself." "Could you please check again?" Eleanor asked, staying polite but firm. Instead of checking her claim, Greg called over the head of security, a big man named Frank Daniels. Their whispered talk just within hearing included words like being difficult and refusing to follow rules. When Frank came over, he didn't try to be nice. "Ma'am, you need to move to your assigned seat or leave the spacecraft." "I paid for this specific seat," Eleanor insisted. "I'd like to speak with a manager about this mistake." Frank crossed his arms. "Either move to 12A or I'll have to make you leave the flight." The other passengers began to notice what was happening. Some recorded the argument on their devices while others looked away uncomfortably. Not one person stepped in to help. "This is silly," Eleanor said. "I've been flying Stellar for 30 years. Check my account status. Ma'am, last warning, move or be removed." When Eleanor tried once more to explain, Frank nodded to 2 security officers who had appeared beside her seat. They grabbed her arms, lifting the elderly woman despite her objections. Eleanor felt pain as they gripped her sore shoulders. "Please be careful," she gasped. But they paid no attention as they forced her down the aisle and off the spacecraft. They gathered her things quickly and pushed them into her arms once they reached the terminal. As the door closed behind her, Eleanor stood alone in the waiting area, feeling humiliated, watching through the window as the spacecraft got ready to leave without her. What the Stellar Airways crew didn't know was exactly who they had just kicked off their flight. Eleanor Washington wasn't just any old passenger. She used to be the head of the Galactic Transportation Authority and now led the Washington Foundation. She controlled one of the largest private investment funds in the solar system. Her foundation, which worked to advance human space exploration, was also a main investor in many transportation companies, including Stellar Airways. After being forced off the spacecraft, Eleanor was taken to a customer service desk staffed by a young man named Kyle Porter, who seemed more interested in his electronic device than in helping her. "I need to speak with the station manager right away," Eleanor stated firmly. Kyle barely looked up. "You can file a complaint with our customer service computer. Someone will get back to you within 5 business days." Eleanor leaned forward. "Young man, do you know who I am?" "Lady, we get that question 50 times a day." Kyle sighed. "Everyone thinks there's someone important." Eleanor pulled out her communication device and made a call. "Patricia, it's Eleanor. I need you to start Protocol Delta on Stellar Airways. Yes, right now, and get me Howard Bennett on the line." Within 3 minutes, Kyle's boss rushed to the desk looking pale. "Dr. Washington, I've just been told we had no idea you were—" "Don't bother," Eleanor cut him off. "I want to speak with Howard now." Howard Bennett, CEO of Stellar Airways, was in the middle of a board meeting on Earth when his emergency line rang. When he heard what had happened, his face went white. "Dr. Washington, please accept my deepest apologies. This is not acceptable. I promise those responsible will be—" "Howard," Eleanor interrupted, her voice calm but cold. "I'm not interested in having a few low-level employees fired as scapegoats. This is a system-wide problem. I was judged, disrespected, and physically handled roughly because of how I look. I'll personally come to address this," Howard began. "No need," Eleanor replied. My foundation will be pulling out its entire $800 million investment in Stellar Airways, effective immediately. Also, I'm withdrawing my research team's proposal for your next-generation engine design. Howard's voice became desperate. Dr. Washington, please. That engine design could change interplanetary travel forever, and our stock will crash with an investment pullout that large. Actions have results, Howard, both mine and yours. As Howard begged, Eleanor ended the call and turned back to the now horrified customer service staff. I'll be taking the next flight to Europa on Universal Transport. I suggest you call them and arrange it. First class, seat 4A. News travels faster than light in the age of instant communications. By the time Eleanor boarded her Universal Transport flight to Europa, the story had spread across the solar system's social networks. Elderly black physicist forced off stellar flight, pulls $800 in funding. The financial markets reacted right away. Stellar Airways stock dropped 18% before trading was temporarily stopped. When it resumed, the decline continued. Competitor companies' shares rose at the same time, with Universal Transport seeing a 12% gain by end of day. On the Universal flight, Eleanor was treated with great respect. The captain personally welcomed her aboard, and the service was perfect. As she settled into her properly assigned seat 4A, Eleanor took out her tablet to review the latest news. Her assistant, Patricia Allen, had put together a summary of what was happening. Over 2 billion people had viewed footage of her removal, captured by other passengers. Famous people and politicians were commenting, almost all condemning Stellar Airways. Several well-known figures had publicly announced they would stop using the company. Most importantly, 17 other major investors had followed Eleanor's lead, announcing their own withdrawal of funds from Stellar. The company's market value had decreased by nearly 30% in just 8 hours. Eleanor wasn't mean by nature. She took no joy in watching a company she'd once believed in suffer such damage. But she understood the power of financial consequences to drive real change. As the Universal Transport vessel moved away from Earth's gravity, Eleanor wrote a public statement. What happened to me today happens to countless individuals who don't have my resources or platform. I use my position to bring attention to these system-wide issues, not for personal revenge, but to create lasting change. I hope Stellar Airways and other companies will recognize that treating all humans with dignity isn't just morally right. It's good business. The statement went viral within minutes of its release. In her private cabin, Eleanor received a message from Alicia Rodriguez, an old friend and director of human spaceflight at the Global Space Agency. I heard what happened. Stellar doesn't deserve your brilliance anyway. Have you thought about bringing that engine design to us instead? Eleanor smiled. Perhaps some good would come from this incident after all. 6 months after the incident, Stellar Airways was a company changed, not by choice but by need. The board fired CEO Howard Bennett 3 days after Eleanor's removal. They replaced him with Danielle Evans, the company's former head of engineering, and one of the few women of color in Stellar's leadership team. Danielle had been pushing for better training against bias and big changes for years, only to be ignored. Now, with the company fighting to survive, Danielle's ideas became Stellar's path to recovery. Under her leadership, Stellar launched the Dignity First program. They completely changed their training programs and put in place the solar system's most thorough anti-discrimination policies. Every employee from flight crews to executives went through training in virtual reality that showed them their hidden biases. Security rules were rewritten to require multiple checks before any passenger could be removed. Customer service workers got special displays that hid information about a person's age or race, forcing them to treat each passenger only based on their situation. The changes weren't just for show. Danielle changed the bonus system, tying executive pay directly to diversity goals and customer happiness scores across all groups of people. Eleanor watched these changes with interest but remained doubtful. Real change needed more than policies. It needed a basic shift in how people thought. 3 months into the changes, Eleanor got a surprise call from Danielle. Dr. Washington, I won't waste your time with more sorry words. Instead, I'd like to invite you to see our changes personally. We've put in place everything you suggested in your public statement, plus more. If you find our reforms not good enough, we'll make whatever changes you suggest." "Why should I believe anything has truly changed?" Eleanor asked. "Because unlike the old boss, I understand that diversity isn't about checking boxes. It's about creating places where everyone can do their best work," Danielle replied. "And because the security officer who removed you, along with his bosses, no longer work for us. Not as scapegoats, but because they refused to accept our new direction." Eleanor thought about the offer. "I'll visit your headquarters. No special treatment. I want to see how you operate when you don't know you're being watched." "Agreed," Danielle said. "And Dr. Washington, that engine design you took back, I hope someday you'll think about letting us see it again. Not now. We haven't earned it yet, but someday." 1 year to the day after being removed from Stellar Airways Flight 347, Dr. Eleanor Washington stood in the waiting area of New Chicago Spaceport, boarding pass in hand. Her destination, Europa Colony. Her carrier, Stellar Airways. Many had questioned her decision to fly with Stellar again. Her foundation had not put back its pulled-out money, though Stellar's stock had recovered much of its lost value due to its widely talked-about reforms. As Eleanor approached the gate, she purposely removed her foundation badge and other things that would identify her. Today, she was just another elderly passenger. The gate agent, a young man named Ryan Bell, greeted her with real warmth. "Good morning, ma'am. Heading to Europa today?" "Yes, I am," Eleanor replied, handing over her boarding pass. Ryan looked at it and smiled. "Seat 4A, excellent choice. The extra legroom makes a big difference on these long flights. Do you need any help boarding today?" "No, thank you. I can manage," Eleanor said, watching closely for any change in his behavior. "Of course, we'll begin boarding in about 15 minutes. Would you like to board first? We're happy to help passengers who might benefit from a bit more time getting settled." The offer was made respectfully, without assumption or talking down to her. Eleanor nodded. That would be appreciated. Once aboard, she found her seat, the right one, prepared with a small note. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Washington. Captain Olivia Spencer." So much for traveling without being recognized, Eleanor thought with a smile. The flight went perfectly. The crew was professional and attentive without being too much. When small bumps hit during the meal service, spilling Eleanor's drink, the response was quick and polite. As the spacecraft entered Jupiter's orbit 3 days later, Captain Spencer's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our approach to Europa Colony. On behalf of Stellar Airways, I want to thank you for choosing to fly with us, particularly those of you who gave us a second chance when we needed to earn it." Eleanor felt the hidden weight of the captain's words. After docking, as passengers got ready to leave, Captain Spencer came out of the cockpit and approached Eleanor's seat. "Dr. Washington, I just wanted to thank you personally," she said quietly. "For what?" Eleanor asked. "For holding us accountable," Spencer replied. "I was a junior pilot when the incident happened. I watched the company I loved nearly destroy itself through its own pride and bias. What you did forced us to change. Many of us, myself included, wouldn't have the opportunities we have now without that wake-up call." Eleanor studied the young captain's face. "The true test of change is what happens when no one important is watching." "We know that now," Spencer said, "and we're better for it." As Eleanor stepped onto Europa's surface and looked back at the sleek Stellar spacecraft, she pulled out her communication device and made a call. "Patricia, it's Eleanor. Contact Danielle Evans at Stellar. Tell her I'm ready to talk about that engine design, and prepare the paperwork to reinvest. Not the full amount, not yet, but enough to show good faith. They've earned that much. In the big story of human progress across the stars, it wasn't technology alone that moved people forward. Sometimes, it took one person standing firm against unfairness, using whatever power they had, be it money, knowledge, or simply the courage, to say enough, to remind humanity that true progress meant leaving no one behind. And as Dr. Eleanor Washington stepped into the busy Europa Colony, She knew that her most important contribution to human space travel might not be her revolutionary engine design, but rather the moment she decided that dignity was worth more than $800 million. 2 years after the incident, Eleanor Washington stood on the podium at the Galactic Transportation Summit. The room was filled with leaders from every major space travel company in the solar system. Among them sat Danielle Evans, now the well-respected CEO of Stellar Airways. Eleanor tapped the microphone. "When I was removed from that flight, I used the power I had, my money and my reputation, to force change. But not everyone has $800 million to pull from a company that treats them badly." The room grew quiet. "Today, I am proud to announce the Dignity in Transit Act, legislation that will ensure all passengers, regardless of their wealth or status, are treated with basic respect." The audience broke into applause. Eleanor had spent the past year working with lawmakers to create rules that would protect all travelers. Under the new law, companies would face serious fines for discrimination, and passengers would have clear rights. After her speech, Danielle approached Eleanor with a smile. "You've changed the industry forever, Dr. Washington." "We've only just begun," Eleanor replied. "How is the engine project coming along?" "Better than expected," Danielle said. "The prototype exceeded our power projections by 30%. If all goes well, we'll be ready for the first test flight in 6 months. Would you like to see it?" Eleanor nodded. "I would indeed." The next day, Eleanor visited Stellar's engineering facility on Mars. The Washington Evans engine, as it had been named, sat in the center of the testing chamber. It was smaller than traditional engines, but glowed with a soft blue light that hinted at the tremendous power within. The lead engineer, Carlos Diaz, guided Eleanor through the technical details. "Your design was revolutionary, Dr. Washington. The quantum resonance chamber allows us to achieve near-light speeds with half the fuel of conventional engines." "And the safety features?" Eleanor asked. "Triple redundancy on all critical systems," Carlos assured her. "This is the safest engine ever built." Eleanor placed her hand on the smooth surface of the engine. "This will cut travel time to Europa from 3 days to 12 hours, she said, "and to the outer planets from months to weeks." "It will change everything," Carlos agreed. Eleanor's foundation had reinvested $400 million in Stellar Airways, but with strict conditions. 20% of the company's board now consisted of people from groups that had historically been excluded from leadership roles. New hiring practices ensured diverse candidate pools for every position. Most importantly, a percentage of profits went to education programs that would train the next generation of space engineers from communities often left behind in the push to the stars. As Eleanor left the facility, her communication device buzzed. It was a message from Patricia. "Turn on the news." Eleanor activated her neural link and saw the headlines. "Universal Transport accused of passenger discrimination." The report showed an elderly Asian man who had been denied boarding on a Universal flight, despite having valid documentation. The company had issued a standard apology, but the damage was already spreading across social networks. Eleanor made a call. "Get me the CEO of Universal Transport." Within minutes, she was speaking with Gerald Mason, Universal's chief executive. "Gerald, I assume you've seen the news," she said without preamble. "Eleanor, I assure you we're looking into the situation. This appears to be an isolated—" "Stop," Eleanor interrupted. 2 years ago, Howard Bennett said the same thing to me. Today, he runs a food cart on Luna Station. I suggest you learn from his mistakes." There was a long pause. "What do you recommend?" Gerald finally asked. "I'm sending you Danielle Evans. Contact information. Call her. Today. Ask her about the Dignity First program. Implement something similar. Do it quickly and do it thoroughly. I have $150 million invested in Universal. I would hate to have to move it." "I understand," Gerald said. "I'll make the call immediately." Eleanor ended the communication and smiled. The industry was learning. 6 months later, Eleanor stood with a small group of dignitaries on the observation deck of Stellar's Mars facility. Below them, the first passenger spacecraft equipped with the Washington Evans engine prepared for its maiden voyage. The sleek vessel, named Dignity, gleamed in the Martian sunlight. It would travel to Europa in record time, carrying 50 passengers including representatives from every major news network. Danielle stood beside Eleanor. "We wouldn't be here without you," she said. "Not just the engine, but everything." Eleanor watched as the final preparations were made. "Do you know what I'm most proud of?" she asked. "The engine," Danielle guessed. Eleanor shook her head. "Look at the crew." Danielle followed Eleanor's gaze to the team preparing the spacecraft. It was the most diverse crew ever assembled for a major launch. People of every background worked together with easy confidence. "That's the real achievement," Eleanor said. 10 years ago, most of those young people would never have been given the chance to be here." The countdown began. The crowd held its breath as the engine powered up, the blue glow intensifying. Then, with barely a sound, the spacecraft rose smoothly and accelerated away, leaving only a faint trail of light. As the cheers erupted around them, Eleanor leaned toward Danielle. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Next month, I'm meeting with the Colonial Development Agency. We need to make sure the new settlements don't repeat the mistakes of the old Earth." Danielle nodded. "Where you lead, others will follow." That evening, as Eleanor prepared to return to Earth, she received a message from an unknown sender. When she opened it, she found a simple video. A young black girl, no more than 10 years old, sitting in a classroom on one of the orbital stations. "My name is Maya Johnson," the girl said. "Today in school we learned about Dr. Eleanor Washington and how she changed space travel forever. When I grow up, I want to be an engineer like her. I want to build things that make life better for everyone." Eleanor saved the message. In all her years of scientific achievements, no recognition had ever meant as much to her as this simple statement from a child she had never met. As her transport ship lifted off from Mars, Eleanor looked out at the stars. The universe was vast, and humanity's journey into it had only just begun. But now, because of one small stand against injustice, that journey would include everyone. Eleanor Washington closed her eyes, satisfied. This was her true legacy. 5 years after the incident on Stellar Airways, Dr. Eleanor Washington celebrated her 83rd birthday on Europa. The moon colony had grown rapidly since the introduction of the Washington-Evans engine, which had made travel between planets faster and cheaper than ever before. Eleanor sat in her apartment overlooking Europa's largest dome city. Through the reinforced glass, she could see Jupiter hanging in the sky, enormous and beautiful. Her birthday dinner had been attended by friends, colleagues, and several young engineers who had benefited from her foundation's education programs. Now alone with her thoughts, Eleanor reviewed the changes of the past 5 years. The Dignity in Transit Act had transformed space travel. All major companies had adopted strong anti-discrimination policies. More importantly, the culture had shifted. Passengers were no longer treated as cargo, but as valued humans. Her communication device chimed with an incoming call. It was Maya Johnson, the young girl who had sent Eleanor a message years ago. Maya was now 15 and one of the brightest students in the Washington Foundation's Young Engineers program. "Happy birthday, Dr. Washington," Maya said, her face bright on the screen. "Thank you, Maya," Eleanor replied with a warm smile. "How are your studies going?" "I just finished my quantum mechanics course with a perfect score," Maya said proudly. "And I've been accepted to the Mars Engineering Academy for next term." "That's wonderful news," Eleanor said. "I always knew you had a brilliant future ahead." After chatting for a few more minutes, Eleanor ended the call, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This was why she had fought so hard, to ensure that young people like Maya would have every opportunity to reach their potential. The next morning, Eleanor's assistant Patricia arrived with news. "The Colonial Council wants to name the new settlement." "On Ganymede after you." Eleanor shook her head. "I don't need a colony named after me. Tell them to name it after someone who never got the recognition they deserved." Patricia smiled. "I thought you might say that. I already suggested they consider naming it after Valerie Brown." Eleanor nodded in approval. Dr. Valerie Brown had been a brilliant physicist who, 50 years earlier, had developed many of the theories that made modern space travel possible, but as a black woman in a field dominated by white men, her contributions had been overlooked until long after her death. "Perfect," Eleanor said. "Now what's on the agenda today?" "The board meeting is in 2 hours," Patricia reminded her. "Then, you have lunch with Danielle Evans to discuss the new engine upgrades." The board meeting of the Washington Foundation went smoothly. Eleanor had gradually stepped back from day-to-day operations, but she remained involved in all major decisions. Today they were discussing the expansion of their education programs to the outer planets. "The settlements on Titan and Callisto need good schools," Eleanor said. "I want to ensure that children born there have the same chances as those born on Earth or Mars." The board agreed, and plans were made to build new learning centers on both moons within the next year. After the meeting, Eleanor met Danielle for lunch at Europa's finest restaurant, the Galileo. The two women had become close friends over the years, united by their commitment to making space accessible to everyone. "The new engine modifications are testing well," Danielle reported. "We've increased efficiency by another 20%. Soon travel to Saturn will take less than a week." "Excellent," Eleanor said. "And how are things at Stellar?" "Better than ever," Danielle replied. "Our passenger satisfaction ratings are the highest in the industry, and our workforce diversity metrics have become the standard that other companies try to match." "And the old guard? The ones who resisted change?" Danielle laughed. "Most of them retired or moved to smaller companies. A few eventually came around when they saw how successful our new approach was. Turns out, treating people with dignity is good for business." They were interrupted by a young server who approached their table nervously. "Dr. Washington, I'm sorry to bother you, but my grandmother was on that Stellar flight with you, the one you were removed from. She told me the story many times before she passed away. She always regretted not speaking up for you that day." Eleanor looked at the young woman with kind eyes. "What's your name?" "Lisa Porter," the server replied. "Well, Lisa, please don't hold that against your grandmother. It's hard to speak up in the moment. What matters is that now, because of what happened that day, people are much more likely to speak up when they see something wrong." Lisa nodded gratefully. "Thank you for understanding, and thank you for everything you've done. My brother works in engineering at Stellar because of your foundation's scholarship program." After Lisa left, Danielle looked thoughtful. "It's amazing how far one moment can reach, isn't it? So many lives changed because you refused to accept being treated poorly." Eleanor nodded. "One person can't change everything, but they can start something that changes everything." That evening, Eleanor received an unexpected call from Howard Bennett, the former CEO of Stellar Airways. He had indeed ended up running a small food business on Luna Station after being fired, but over the years had built it into a successful restaurant chain. "Dr. Washington," he said, looking older but somehow lighter than when she had last seen him. "I've wanted to call you for years, but I wasn't sure you'd speak to me." "What can I do for you, Howard?" Eleanor asked neutrally. "Nothing. I just wanted to thank you," he said. "Being fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to reevaluate everything. My restaurants now have the strongest anti-discrimination policies in the industry, and I'm happier than I ever was as CEO." Eleanor was surprised, but pleased. "I'm glad to hear that, Howard. The incident changed my life," Howard continued, "but more importantly, it changed countless other lives for the better. I just wanted you to know that even the person who seemed to lose the most in this situation ultimately gained something valuable." After the call ended, Eleanor stood by the window of her apartment, watching the stars. She thought about how a single moment of injustice responded to with clarity and purpose had created ripples that continued to spread outward. The next day she would visit the construction site of the new school her foundation was building. The day after, she would review plans for the next generation of spacecraft engines. Her work continued, and would continue long after she was gone. Eleanor Washington smiled at the stars. The universe was vast, but not so vast that one person couldn't make a difference. 10 years after the incident that changed space travel forever, Earth prepared to celebrate Dr. Eleanor Washington's 88th birthday with the unveiling of a very special project. The aging physicist still maintained a sharp mind, though. She now used a mobility aid to get around and spent most of her time on Europa, where the lower gravity made movement easier. Today, she had returned to Earth for the first time in 3 years. The trip had been made comfortable by the latest version of the engine she had helped create. The new passenger ships could make the journey from Jupiter to Earth in just 2 days, with artificial gravity systems that eased the transition between different planetary environments. Eleanor sat in her hover chair on the stage at the Global Space Agency headquarters in New Chicago. Beside her were Danielle Evans, still the CEO of Stellar Airways, and Maya Johnson, now 20 years old, and one of the most promising young engineers in the solar system. The audience was filled with government officials, industry leaders, and students from the many schools established by the Washington Foundation. They had all come to witness the announcement of a historic mission. The GSA director, Alicia Rodriguez, approached the microphone. Today, we are proud to announce the Washington Initiative, humanity's first mission beyond our solar system. The crowd erupted in applause as a holographic display appeared above the stage, showing a sleek spacecraft unlike any seen before. Using the latest generation of the Washington Evans engine, the Starship Dignity will travel to Proxima Centauri, our nearest neighboring star system. The journey will take approximately 5 years compared to the 50 years it would have taken with previous technology. Eleanor looked at the ship with a mix of pride and wonder. When she had first designed the quantum resonance engine, she never imagined it would eventually enable interstellar travel. After the ceremony, Eleanor met with the mission team. The crew of the Dignity had been selected not only for their technical skills but also for their diverse backgrounds and perspectives. The ship's captain, Richard Okafor, had been one of the first students to receive a Washington Foundation scholarship. "It's an honor to lead this mission, Dr. Washington," Richard said as he shook her hand. "The honor is mine, Captain," Eleanor replied. "To see how far we've come in just a decade is beyond anything I could have imagined." That evening, a small private dinner was held in Eleanor's honor. Among the guests was Lisa Porter, the server she had met on Europa 5 years earlier. Lisa was now the head of community relations for Stellar Airways. "We've just launched our 100th Community Education Center," Lisa reported proudly. "Every major settlement in the solar system now has a place where anyone, regardless of background, can learn the skills needed for a career in space." Eleanor smiled warmly. "That's wonderful news, Lisa. That was always the goal, to open doors for everyone." After dinner, Eleanor found herself alone with Maya Johnson. The young woman had recently completed her advanced degree in quantum engineering and had been selected as part of the research team for the Dignity mission. "I have something to show you, Dr. Washington," Maya said, pulling out a small device. She activated it, and a hologram appeared showing a modified version of the quantum resonance engine. "I've been working on this design in my spare time. The simulations suggest it could increase efficiency by another 40%. Eleanor studied the hologram carefully. "This is brilliant, Maya. Have you shown this to the GSA?" Maya nodded. "They're already incorporating elements of it into the next generation of engines. They're calling it the Johnson-Washington Drive." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "This is exactly what I hoped for. Not just that you would follow in my footsteps, but that you would go beyond what I accomplished." The next morning, Eleanor visited the Stellar Airways headquarters, now housed in a beautiful building that emphasized openness and inclusion. The company had become the model for the entire industry, with profits that far exceeded what they had been in the old days of discrimination and poor treatment. In the main lobby stood a simple plaque that read, "On this day, we remember that dignity is not just a moral value. It is the foundation of our success. We honor those who taught us this lesson." Danielle guided Eleanor through the facility, proudly showing her the advances they had made. The company now had training programs that recruited from communities traditionally left out of the space industry, and their executive team reflected the diversity of the solar system's population. "We're opening 3 new routes next month," Danielle explained. including the first regular passenger service to the Saturn moons. And the treatment of passengers? Eleanor asked. Danielle smiled. 10 years running with the highest satisfaction ratings in the industry. Our customer service agents are trained to treat everyone with the same level of respect, regardless of who they are. As Eleanor prepared to return to Europa the following day, she received a message from Patricia, her faithful assistant of many years. Patricia was now in her 70s herself, but still managed the Washington Foundation with remarkable efficiency. The Foundation Board has approved all your recommendations, Patricia reported. The new scholarship program for the Outer Planets will begin next month, and the funding for the Inclusive Design Initiative has been doubled. Eleanor nodded with satisfaction. Thank you, Patricia. I think we've managed to build something truly lasting. That night, Eleanor sat alone in her room watching the Earth's night sky through her window. She thought about the journey that had begun with a simple act of discrimination and led to a transformation of human society among the stars. The next day, as she boarded the Stellar Airways flight back to Europa, the entire crew lined up to greet her. The captain, a young woman named Zoe Taylor, saluted with deep respect. Dr. Washington, it's an honor to have you aboard. Your seat 4A is ready for you. Eleanor smiled at the reference to that fateful day long ago. Thank you, Captain Taylor. As the ship lifted off, Eleanor looked down at the Earth growing smaller below. Humanity's journey among the stars was still just beginning. But thanks to one moment of standing up for dignity, it would be a journey that included everyone. In her pocket, Eleanor carried a small gift Maya had given her, a model of the Dignity starship that would soon venture to another star. It was a symbol of how far they had come and how much further they would go together.